Hello, everyone. I'm Judge Janine Pirro, along with Jessica Tarlov, Joey Jones, Kennedy, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five.
Right.
Let me start by apologizing for my voice. I'm feeling much better than I sound.
The president is doing better. He slept well last night. He ate his breakfast and lunch. He actually showed me his plate. He finished, didn't ask about the menu, but I did see an empty plate with crumbs. Oh my God.
President Biden isolated in COVID jail, trying to project confidence that he is okay after catching the virus. The president's symptoms are improving after his first full day of taking the antiviral drug Paxlovid. But there's plenty of controversy. The White House being questioned over why Biden's doctor is not being allowed to talk directly to the American people. Things getting really testy in the briefing room over that one.
Yes, you have. You've heard from the letter that is hearing directly from him. We're not playing telephone here. You're hearing directly from the physician. Yes, it is. I mean, that is hearing directly from, in his words. In his words, you are hearing directly from Dr. O'Connor, as I read out. But I'm answering your colleague's question here, so give me the second to do that. Thank you.
And then there's the media. We wish the president a speedy recovery. Unfortunately, the press wasn't so gracious back when President Trump got infected.
Going into crowds, unmasked and all the rest, was sort of a brazen invitation for something like this to happen.
In large part, it's his own dereliction is partly to blame for this. He chose to handle this situation this way.
I look at this as a drunk driver who injured himself in a wreck and killed the oncoming sober driver. Donald Trump has injured himself.
The treatment he's getting at taxpayer expense is privileged treatment. It angered me.
He didn't take the necessary precautions to protect himself or others.
I think it would also be a good idea for him to come out and say, look, I have been wrong.
Fast forward to now. The media is singing a different tune and praising Biden's maskless video explaining his COVID diagnosis.
Let's remember his predecessor took off his mask, even though it was sort of in the period where he could have possibly infected other people. He didn't want to talk about getting vaccinated at the White House. President Biden, I suspect, just in talking to White House officials, is going to remind people, yes, I could get it, which means you can get it, which means we all have to be vigilant about this.
Okay, so what we have is a story of two presidents, one being basically condemned, it's his fault he got COVID, and one being praised as a strong man who's coming through this disease. I'm going to go to you, Greg. You know, when Biden criticized Trump, he said he didn't take the necessary precautions to defend himself. How can we expect him to defend the country? Now, we saw Biden. He was in Israel. He was in Saudi Arabia. He wasn't wearing a mask.
Yeah, the big difference between Joe and Donald is not a super spreader. You know, he was a germaphobe before it was cool, right? And he never shook hands with anybody until he had to run for president, and then he had to do it. Meanwhile, Joe Biden invades everyone's personal space. He has no idea. He's like Russia. He's like a personal Russia plundering Ukraine, but it's your personal space. You saw how many people he touched. I mean, he's spreading so much virus. Hunter Biden is jealous. Also, we got to point this out. I love that montage just to see the number of people who have obvious risk factors passing judgment on people. If you were as obese as Brian Stelter, you can't go on there and start criticizing people about what they're doing about their health. And I'm glad the doctor said he finished his plate, and I hope he went boom, boom after. But I don't question the diagnosis at all. I just question the timing of it. I mean, first you had that wacko cancer gaffe from 2 days ago, right? In which the media rushed to the defense. Oh, no, he had skin cancer. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that he said he got cancer from oil, and it made no sense. But now you have polling that shows that he's less popular than getting punched in the face. So there could be a reason for a lot of this, that they're just trying to hide him, because that's the only thing that works, and perhaps maybe to generate some sympathy. Next week, they're going to say, you know, he has fibroids. because, as you know, men can get pregnant.
But you know, the craziest part of it is not so much that, you know, he said that he has cancer, and they said, yeah, it's skin cancer. He said it in the present tense. I had cancer. I don't say in the present tense. And the White House having to go back, Kennedy, and meet and say, we've got to clarify this. How can we trust a president who can't even say what tense he's in?
Well, I don't know that you can, and I know Jessica's supposed to be the Democrat on the panel today, but this president is miraculous. We have not given him enough credit to overcome cancer and COVID in a day. I mean, he's so healthy. He ate a plate of food, and he slept at night. This is really wonderful. I have completely done a 180 on this president, and I want to vote for him again and again and again. I hope he runs in 3028. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
And that's how healthy he is, and he's going to last forever. You know why we haven't heard from his personal doctor?
That was the next question.
Reading a letter is not hearing from a doctor. Reading a letter is reading a letter because you can't ask a letter questions. I have tried. When the former Vice President Dan Quayle sent me a missive, it would not answer back when I would talk to it. That's one thing. But the other thing is Ronnie Jackson. That's why you're not hearing from his doctor. Ronnie Jackson, because if the press isn't totally hypocritical, they are going to drill in so hard, just like they did on the former president's doctor.
Okay, so Jessica, I'll let you answer that. Why did we have an epidemiologist yesterday answering questions about the president? He works in the White House, but he's not the president's doctor. Why did, you know, it was very telling the way Karine Jean-Pierre responded. She was very rattled by the insistence that you're not being transparent. You're not letting us talk to a doctor.
I'd like to say, first of all, that Kennedy violated the rules by stealing my talking points while I was getting my makeup done and coming out here and giving them. I think that his personal physician should be made available. I think that if you did criticize the past guy for all of these things, you know, remember that Dr. Bornstein who wrote that ridiculous letter that then it was admitted that Trump dictated it himself, set a better precedent, and it's not the end of the world, and people will ask questions. I'm fairly 99% certain that Joe Biden is in certainly much better health than President Trump was, just based on the fact that he exercises and...
You don't think golf is exercising, Jessica? You offended our audience.
I don't think that I did. I mean, golf... I watched a little of the golf last weekend. They look pretty fit, but they're professional athletes versus just people hanging at their golf courses.
Joe Biden can't go upstairs.
Stop it. Okay, the reason that the comparisons between Biden's COVID and Trump's COVID are quite clear and relevant to be making is Donald Trump got COVID before vaccines. He got them before antivirals. It was very risky. There were reports that came out after, thank God, he got out of Walter Reed, that people on his team were scared he was going to die. He was that sick. He also had, before he got sick, at the beginning of COVID, claimed it wasn't airborne when it was airborne. And even once he did get vaccinated, he didn't want to talk about it because so many people in his base weren't for it. There was booing at a rally about getting vaccinated. He did not treat COVID nearly as seriously as President Biden did. I'm not taking away credit for Operation Warp Speed.
Warp Speed is what brought it to us.
This is a man who went to the hospital because he was that sick and then insisted that the Secret Service drive him out to his fans who were waiting for him while the man had a disease that has now killed over 1 million Americans.
It's a man of the people.
Yes, he is.
Oh,
and, you know,
what a gem.
And people love the man.
And
they would have taken his virus.
I'm sure, which is scary. It's a whole other block
but
to talk
Joey,
about that.
Isn't it interesting how they can both be on a balcony? One's a killer and one's a hero.
You know, what's interesting to me is it's so fun for Democrats to sharpshoot President Trump in every action he made, every word he said, how he got COVID, how he handled it. They love to go back and rewrite history or at least re-examine President Trump's actions on COVID. But you won't hear them criticizing anything about Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx or every single expert or every single expert that has been trumped out there. And almost everything they said was proven wrong within 6 months, 8 months, a year. So for the experts that they enjoy, it's that, hey, it was a moving target. We had to figure it out. We didn't know that we didn't know that these types of masks didn't work. When since then they've admitted that they really did that so that medical professionals could get them and regular people wouldn't go buy them up. And all these things, you know, everything from Dr. Fauci probably funding to the research that helped lead to this and covering it up. They don't want to re-examine any of that, but they do want to re-examine how President Trump got COVID and, you know, the sad fact that he didn't die from it, I guess. I'm not really sure.
Don't do that.
I'm not talking- I didn't say
they
you.
said
I
it.
didn't say
They
you.
said it.
I
They
didn't
said
say
it.
you.
We're not talking about you.
We're talking
but they
about
kept
how this was
saying,
reported.
Maybe they didn't want him to
hold on.
die from it, but
They
they
did.
certainly were acting as though he
They
deserved it.
loved
Yes,
it.
And he's
exactly.
brought
They
it
loved
upon
it, and
himself.
they
We
kept
here
saying-
want Joe Biden to live more than Democrats do.
That's exactly right.
And
I'm
they
making
kept
that
saying,
statement.
We
Hallelujah.
want Trump to get the COVID over and over and over again. That's a quote.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.